Well, it's Indian Wells semi-final time, and they're pretty decent semi-finals. Roger Federer versus Rafael Nadal, and Milos Raonic versus Dominic Thiem, which I think is rather open. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe because that's basically the only way you're gonna know when I'm going live or when I'm uploading these days, because I don't know myself. I'm not going to hang around before we launch into the preview and predictions because I don't expect many people to be watching this live. The idea is that I film it now so that it's there, and then if people are interested, they can go back to it and watch it. And I'm short on this little thing called time, so I'm going to be watching the clock for a change, and this isn't definitely isn't going to be the longest live stream of mine that you've seen. So it's been a while since you've seen me. If you want the excuses for that, watch till the end of the video because I'm not going to bore the people who are simply here for the preview and predictions. So more updates on where I've been and what I've been doing at the end of the video. But quickly, in case you notice a change in my voice, I've been ill this week. I had a really bad cough and my voice is only just coming back. So if it sounds a little more hoarse or deeper than usual, I'm sorry, nothing I can do about that, but shouldn't hinder us as we go into this preview and predictions video. So stay tuned for some analysis and some probably dodgy predictions, although to be fair, I think I got the vast majority of my Australian Open predictions right, and they were via live stream, so maybe that's a good thing. Right, so we are going to start with the first semi-final. I believe it's the first semi-final being played this evening, which is another reason I'm doing this live stream, because I would not have had time to film the video, do the jump cuts, put all the edits in, upload it ahead of the two matches that are taking place this evening. My time is more afternoon time in America. So yeah, I wouldn't have had time, and it wouldn't have been worth doing if I did the whole jump cuts thing. After I filmed this video, I'm sidetracking already, I can feel it. After I film this video, I intend to sit and do a pre-recorded video to preview and predict the women's final. The reason I can't do that for the men's is because I don't work on Sundays. I'm in church morning and evening, and yeah, I wouldn't be able to do the men's final, but I really wanted to preview the men's semis because last year I remember I only did a video for the women's final, and it's been a really intriguing men's tournament, to be fair. So getting on with it now. Nearly hit 3 minutes already, good grief. Okay, so first semi-final, Milos Raonic versus Dominic Thiem. And this is the half of the draw that fielded Novak Djokovic, the top seed and obviously the Australian Open champion. Both world number ones and Australian Open champions, Novak Djokovic and Naomi Osaka, crashed out on the same day. Djokovic was out in the third round, his second match, to Philip Kohlschreiber, and that opened up the way for several players, including the two players remaining in the draw on this side. Now, I am going to be looking down a bit because barely done any prep for this, let's be real. I've got the draw in front of me, I've got the head-to-heads in front of me, so I will be glancing down from time to time. When I say I've barely done any prep, I haven't really been looking into stats and previous history and stuff. I've been watching the tennis, which is part of the issue because I was up watching the tennis until after 4 AM last night, so wasn't up in time to do a pre-record of this. But moving on, where are we? Also, Google isn't working like it usually does, and I'm not getting a straightforward layout of each player's path to this stage, so I'm actually on the draw itself looking for the players. Here we go, Milos Raonic, the number 13 seed. Got a bye in the first round, and not the easiest of opening opponents. He faced Sam Querrey, who Querrey was kind of peaking in terms of his form and what he was achieving around the 2016-2017 mark. Obviously has a big, powerful game, but not the player he was at present. Him and Raonic have a history of pretty decent rivalry. I feel like they've faced off more than they have, to be honest, but Raonic, a good win for him there, 7-6, 6-4 to launch his campaign. Struggled a bit with Marcus Giron. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly because I hadn't heard much about him before this tournament, but the American qualifier had good wins over Jeremy Chardy and Alex de Minaur ahead of his his match with Raonic, but Raonic able to fend off some good fight from Giron in that match. I thought he played a really good match, the American qualifier, and what I've seen with both of, well, a few actually of Raonic's most recent matches, his one against Giron, his one against Jan-Lennard Struff, and his most recent match against I'm gonna kill this, Miomir Kekmanovic. I've been watching with it on mute because I've been doing other stuff at the same time, so I should have had it on a bit more to actually get a proper pronunciation, because this guy had a killer tournament. He was playing really, really well. He was into the draw, Kekmanovic, or probably Kecmanovic, to be fair, as a lucky loser. He got in place of Kevin Anderson, so automatically got a first round bye. And he's great to watch. He's really fluid. He does a proper follow through on both his forehand and backhand, and has a big serve, has a lot of weapons, but I'm skipping ahead of myself. Both all of Kecmanovic, Jan-Lennard Struff, and Marcos Giron, I felt, were pinpointing Raonic's serve and volley quite effectively. It was almost like Raonic's serve and volley, however good it was, because it was becoming a bit predictable, and these players were ready for it, and they were getting him at the net quite often, but he was able to produce the quality needed to survive that. He came past Giron in 3 sets, beat Jan-Lennard Struff 6-4, 6-3, which is very good because Struff is another big server. And then the win over Kecmanovic was 6-3, 6-4. This draw is really hard to read, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct with that because I watched that match. Yeah, that is the one. Okay, so that's Raonic's road to the semis. Not really faced any standout names. I mean, of the players that he's beaten to get to the semi-finals of the biggest Masters 1000 event on tour, the biggest name he's beaten is Sam Querrey, who's not in fantastic form, really, and who he faced in his first match. But, I mean, there's been a lot of turbulence in this half of the draw, and he's come through what he's needed to come through at the end of the day. So that's Raonic. I've just thought of another thing that I'm going to need in the future. I'm going to need to look back at people's record on the year, because that's going to be very important when I come to actually making the prediction. So excuse me a brief moment while I get that up. So from what I've seen of Raonic, I think that he's been playing decent tennis. I wouldn't say it's his best tennis. I'd say he peaked in terms of form, and that in 2016 when he was actually looking scarily good at times. Beat Roger Federer in the Brisbane final, and also reached the Wimbledon final, losing to Andy Murray, beating Federer on the way there. Did he beat Federer in Brisbane then? I think he did, because I'm pretty sure that 2016 Brisbane title was actually Raonic's most recent ATP title, which when I heard, I was surprised, because it was 2016 when Raonic was starting to look really good. He was swinging, he was playing with so much power, and you kind of got the, uh-oh, this guy is coming through and he's gonna tear the field apart kind of feeling, which wasn't common outside of the big four and the very elite players. And it's weird to me that he hasn't been able to capitalize, but after Wimbledon, when he vowed that he was going to be better, faster, stronger, all of that jazz, he picked up quite a few injuries, which have been a problem for Raonic recently. And given that he was injured, I think he struggled with injury quite a bit last year, along with players like Stan Wawrinka, Joel-Alfred Tsonga. He's definitely on his way back, and has been doing... Sorry, notifications going off there. He's been doing a pretty decent job, in my opinion, but let's just get these recent histories up on Raonic and Thiem. So Dominic Thiem, probably a player not many people expected to see at this stage of Indian Wells, because he'd kind of dropped off a bit, Thiem, if we're being honest. He was a solid presence in the top 4 for some time, but dropped off a bit at the end of last year, wasn't playing with the same consistency, and was just tending to lose matches that he shouldn't have been losing more often. So yeah, didn't have a great time of it in London at the end of last year. He reached the Paris semis apparently, which I forgot, but no, he didn't have a fantastic run, or not on a par with what he has been doing. I think I'm going to be honest here. One time, I think near the beginning of when I started this channel, someone told me not to let on if I hadn't watched a certain match, or if I haven't seen enough of a certain player. They were like, do not admit to not having watched it. I'm not going to do that. I'm always going to be, it's not being dishonest, but I think it has been a bit deceitful, and I don't want to be deceiving. Honestly, I can't remember if I've watched any of Thiem's matches this week or so, this past week or so in Indian Wells, which I'm not ashamed of because there's so much tennis going on. It's ridiculous to try and keep track of it, especially with the time zones I have with everything going on. But definitely of these 4 players left in the draw, Thiem is the player I've seen least of. So if you want to take that into account when you're considering my prediction, then that's fine. But let's find him in this top half of the draw. Where could he be? We'll be facing Milos Raonic for the 3rd time in their careers, I think, in this match. Here he is. He's seeded higher at number 7. Also got a first round bye because of that. Played Jordan Thompson in the first round and came through in straight sets. Notable about Thiem's path to date is that he hasn't dropped a set yet, and he did get a walkover in the last round against Gael Monfils, who was injured and was unable to compete. But so far he has played, let's have a look, 1, 2, 3. There's my cough again, it still hasn't quite gone. He's played 3 matches and had a walkover and a bye, and not dropped a set. So first match was against Jordan Thompson, 6-4, 7-5. That's decent. Thompson's been in some decent form lately since the beginning of the year. Then played Gilles Simon, and I think they've had some. No, Thiem has a very dominant head-to-head against Simon, which I found intriguing, really, because Simon is a player who's troubled the top guys a lot. He has a lot going on in his game. He gets the balls back, he slices, he frustrates. But Thiem, as far as I can remember, has never lost a match to him. Or if he has, then it hasn't been for a long time. Let's have a look at the head-to-head quickly, because this is... I feel that was quite a big win for Thiem. And I did watch some of this match, I think. Okay, so Simon's won 2 matches in the head-to-head, but Thiem has won the last 7, 8. Thiem's won the last 8 matches in their rivalry, so he's on a bit of a roll there. So in terms of the name, that's supposed to be quite a test for Thiem, but actually he manhandled it, 6-3, 6-1. So that's still impressive that he was able to come through that easily. And then he had Ivo Karlovic, and big serving Karlovic had a great start to the season, won an ATP title. I think, no, he reached the final. I'm getting all my stats wrong today. You can tell I'm unprepared. Karlovic actually lost in the final in India to Kevin Anderson. It was 3 sets. Pretty sure it was 3 tie breaks as well, but I mean, check me on that in the state that I'm in. But yeah, 6-4, 6-3 for Thiem. Good win. But again, you know, considering the caliber and level of this tournament, I'm surprised by the quality or the notability of the players that Raonic and Thiem have beaten on the way to this stage. You would have expected them to have been challenged a bit more, come up against some big names. And this did look like a loaded draw, half of the draw. But, I mean, Djokovic was beaten, obviously, by Kohlschreiber. Kyrgios was beaten by Kohlschreiber. Guy was having a good run. Borna Coric was also in this half and lost early on to Karlovic. So there were big names here. Alexander Zverev, who lost to Struff. You know, there were names here that could have done damage. Alex de Minaur. who were just beaten early on. Kei Nishikori also, I think, in this half. So the point here is that both of these players have beaten the players they need to get to the stage. I think they're on level pegging, and that the caliber of opposition they've beaten, I think, is fairly even, which is surprising, yes, for this stage, but it is what it is. And honestly, I say this with all the predictions I do, but it could really go either way, this one. But I think I have in mind who I'm going to predict to win. So the key elements of both these players when they're playing well, Raonic obviously has the big serve. He's coming up to the net a lot at the moment, because when he hits a big serve and comes up to block it with the serve and volley, he's a big guy, Raonic, so he's able to cover that net really well. And when he's sharp, he's lethal. He knows how to hit those angles, and he was looking scary good again in Australia at the Australian Open. So even though he's been pushed a bit this tournament by players that you wouldn't expect, I think that he's definitely doing the right things tactically. It just depends whether Thiem himself is sharp enough to pinpoint those serve and volleys like previous players have been doing, and really take advantage of that. So I think Thiem obviously has the one-handed backhand, and it really, Thiem's pretty solid all round, I think, in terms of his serve, his forehand, his one-handed backhand. He can come forward when he needs to. Let's have a look at the head-to-heads. Raonic leads by 2 wins to love. They haven't played since 2016. Important to note is both of their previous meetings did come in 2016, which is, as we've said, when Raonic was having his peak performances, his best form, in my opinion, as I've said, came in 2016. And both those wins came in straight sets, 6-3, 6-4 in Cincinnati, and 7-6, 6-3 at the ATP World Tour Finals. So both of them on hard courts, even though one was indoors, but one of them was at an outdoor hard court tournament in America, which is where we are right now. So I'm not going to beat around the bush with this. I think that obviously both players are kind of similar, I think, in what they've accomplished on tour. Both of them have won, I think, a Masters 1000 title. Both of them have potentially the talent and quality needed to win a slam, but haven't got there yet. And yeah, in terms of that, they are quite similar in what they've achieved, but I have in my mind who I think is going to win this one. So even though Dominic Thiem hasn't dropped a set yet, and even though having a walkover in the last rounds might give him rest that is beneficial, it also might throw his rhythm a bit. And I think that Raonic is ready to step up and take this one, so I'm going to predict Milos Raonic to win this match. And I'll say in straight sets. Milos Raonic to win in straights. So that's that. And took longer than I expected, but it always does, so I'm not surprised. Okay, the Wi-Fi hasn't dropped yet, which is fantastic. So that's the first meeting. This one, surprisingly, should probably take me a shorter amount of time. Because when two all-time greats like Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal have faced off so many times, you could either talk forever or you could keep it short and simple, because there is so much information there that I think the further you go into it and the more you think into it, the more difficult it is to actually figure out who's going to come out on top on the day. So Roger Federer versus Rafael Nadal for the 39th time. They faced off at Indian Wells in 2017, so 2 years ago, and Federer came out on top on that occasion. I think that Federer actually said recently, or yesterday, I'm more on top with actually watching the tennis than hearing what the players have said after matches and stuff, but I did see something where Federer said, with the amount of times that himself and Nadal have faced off, people can look into the head-to-head and previous history as much as they want and come up with reasons for either player to come out on top and to win this next match. And it's true, there's so much history between the pair. Each of them have got a significant number of wins over each other. Federer's been on a big winning streak against Nadal in recent times. He won all 4 of their 2017 meetings, plus their last meeting in 2015 when Nadal was struggling. So it's really been a roller coaster because Nadal actually leads the head-to-head significantly. But before we go too much into that, and as I say, with it being such a detailed rivalry, I want to try and keep it more concise because there's so much detail we could go into and we'd be here forever. Let's have a look at each of their progressions in this draw. Now, Nadal yet to drop a set, I believe. I'm just checking my facts, and that's true. He's the number 2 seed, so seeded higher than Federer. Had a bye in the first round, dismissed Jared Donaldson easily, 6-1, 6-1. Diego Schwartzman almost as easily, 6-3, 6-1. Schwartzman a lot smaller and a lot more suited to a clay court, really, so not surprised by that result at all. Filip Krajinovic played a good match to defeat Daniil Medvedev, but no match for Nadal, 6-3, 6-4. I felt like Krajinovic could have gone for a bit more in that match. When you're up against Nadal and you're lacking weapons, you just need to swing a bit, and I don't think it's easier said than done. I don't think he did that as much as he could. I felt like towards the end of the match, Nadal tightened a bit, was struggling to serve it out. He could have capitalized a bit, he didn't. But that's what makes Nadal Nadal. Once you've got the hang of playing his ground stroke physical game, you've got to beat him mentally. You have to beat him mentally as well, and that's difficult business. So another straight sets win for Nadal there, 6-3, 6-4. And then his most recent match was against Karen Khachanov, which was a brilliant match last night. I watched the majority of it, and Nadal came through 7-6, 7-6, winning both tiebreaks via a 7-2 scoreline. He actually led by a set and a break before Khachanov fought back. And in that match, actually, Khachanov broke serve immediately to get things underway. He broke to love. He was hitting the lines. He was coming forwards. And he plays with a very heavy ball, Khachanov. Really big serve and can play well from all areas of the court, which is what got him to the Masters 1000 title at the end of last year, where he beat Djokovic in the final. He's a very talented player. He'd played Nadal before and made it very entertaining at the US Open, I think, last year. But Nadal, at the end of the day, is problem solving brilliantly again, as he did in Australia. He didn't drop a set on the way to the Australian Open final. He was looking in vintage form, really, really good. Then when he reached Djokovic, he couldn't cope with the fact that he was forced to play with a different game style to what he had been, and having been injured so recently, he said he was honest and he said he just couldn't adjust and was beaten in straights. But similar again, he's looked very comfortable really on the whole going into this semi-final match with Federer, and Khachanov asked a lot of questions of him in that quarter-final match, and Nadal came up with the answers. Something to note from that match, Nadal was having trouble with his knee. He had to have it taped up. It's a common thing for Nadal now. Sorry, just gonna... throat's still a bit sore. But yeah, Khachanov big with the forehands, with the serve, coming forward, trying to make Nadal think, which he did, and make Nadal change it up, and that forced some real quality out of Nadal. So I think that's the most interesting match that Nadal's played so far, and who knows, it might have given him a lot of confidence going into face Roger Federer, who, as we've said, he's on a 5-match losing streak against. And I saw something crazy today that said that the last time Nadal had beaten Federer, Novak Djokovic only had 6 Grand Slam titles, or Djokovic has 15 Grand Slam titles now. So I was sat there for a moment like, is this a joke? But it's true, because there was a space of time when Federer and Nadal actually didn't face off. Either one or the other of them was struggling. They were on opposite halves of the draw sometimes, didn't get to face each other. But no, Nadal has not beaten Federer since the 2014 Australian Open, which is a match I remember like it was yesterday. So it's crazy to think that it's been that long. I remember so vividly the fact that Nadal had Federer's number for so long. Prior to this streak of 5 wins for Federer, it was 5 straight victories for Nadal, and that's how it's been in recent times. It's not been one wins one and one wins the other. There was that streak of Nadal dominance. Now there's been this streak of Federer dominance because it was 5 wins each. Does that mean that it's about time for Nadal to take over again? Time will tell. It was a bit back and forth before that. But before we go, before we go into talking about the head-to-head in a little bit more detail, because like I said, don't want to go over the top with this one. Let's have a look at Federer's run to the semi-finals briefly. Trying not to think about the fact I still have to do another preview after this. Yeah, number 4 seed Federer, which is quite fortunate really, because he was down at world number 7 very recently. First round bye, got Peter Kochalczyk in the first round, who has played some of his best tennis in recent times. 6-1, 7-5 for Federer, and Federer also yet to drop a set in Indian Wells. Stan Wawrinka, which was his next opponent, and looking at the draws, it's interesting because that presence of Stan Wawrinka, even though he's not the force that he once was at present, he struggled with injuries a lot. His presence in Federer's draw actually means that Federer has beaten he has the most impressive list of victims in terms of names, I think, which doesn't take much because none of these players in the semis have had to come through top 10 opponents yet. It's just the way the draw has fallen and the way things have worked out. But a 6-3, 6-4 victory over Wawrinka. Federer looks really convincing in that match. And then a 6-1, 6-4 dismissal of Kyle Edmund to back it up. Edmund had his best form last year, beat Novak Djokovic, beat Andy Murray, and really proved himself, really established himself, won a first ATP title. So people might brush that one off as well, but I think that's a really decent win for Federer from over a player who's definitely gaining in confidence and has the quality to do damage. He's a Grand Slam semi-finalist. And then a match against Hubert Hurkacz. Again, I'm sorry if, I mean, there are players' names like Dominic Thiem that I was pronouncing wrong for years, and Milos Raonic. I called him Raonic for many years. That was a hard habit to break. But yeah, Hubert Hurkacz, who I think, if I've got this correct, he made a good run at one of the slams last year. Great player, good one-handed backhands. I think I'm mixing them all up now. There were so many players that made good breakthroughs this tournament, but good win for Federer, 6-4, 6-4. I didn't watch that match because I can't watch every match. I was busy at the time, but I've watched a lot of Federer's tennis this tournament, and I watched him in Dubai, where he finally got over the line and won that 100th title, which was a couple of weeks ago. So all in all, a good run of form for Federer, and I think even if he won't admit it, I think getting across the line and getting that title number 100 was probably a big victory mentally for Federer. He'd been chasing it for a while, and he'll definitely have been happy to get that one nailed down ahead of Indian Wells, which is obviously a big stage, and with it comes a different kind of pressure. So, Federer versus Nadal for the 39th time. Who is going to win? We'll have my thoughts on it. Federer and Nadal, I think people have a lot of discussions over what the best rivalry in tennis is. The closest rivalry. Djokovic and Nadal stands out. They have a really close head-to-heads. Djokovic and Federer also have a pretty close head-to-heads. The head-to-head actually with Nadal and Federer isn't as close. Nadal leads the rivalry, 23 wins to 15 losses. But sorry, lost my train of thought. I think that the Nadal versus Federer head-to-heads, this rivalry is the most loved rivalry, and I don't think it's necessarily to do with the fact that a lot of people love Federer and Nadal and they have a massive fan base. I think it's to do with probably what made them stand out in the first place, I feel like Federer versus Nadal is the two extremes of how tennis can be played. It's grace versus grit. And I know that people find that a bit of a cliche when talking about Federer, but it's true. They play with two completely different game styles. And to me, these two players represent the polar opposites of how tennis can be played. And I think that's why it's such a loved rivalry, because it's those polar opposites of the same game coming together and making for a really great clash of styles. You've got Federer, who hits really slick, can get so much variety on his serve. His backhand and the heightened consistency with that particular shot was what got him to so many good results against Nadal in 2017. You've got Nadal with the insane amount of topspin he can get on that forehand, the passing shots he can hit with it, and his sheer determination and willpower that even on the back foot can turn a point around. There are just, two wonderful games here that are played in two completely different ways. And I think that that is what makes this clash and this rivalry stand out, even though Nadal's won a lot more matches than Federer has, and even though it's not as close as, say, Nadal versus Djokovic or Federer versus Djokovic. And so, considering, hopefully, if Nadal is fit, this should be a good match, no questions asked. But Federer did have the upper hand in 2017, didn't lose any of their 4 meetings, and only one of those meetings extended straight sets, which was their legendary Australian Open final battle, which went the distance. It was 5 sets, and obviously Federer got across the line there and won his much-awaited 18th Grand Slam title, which many people thought he'd never get to. Of the other 4 clashes, I'm looking at them now, but I remember them quite vividly. Of the other 3 clashes even, Indian Wells, Federer swept up 6-2, 6-3 in the 4th round. He beat Nadal, and then they played again in Miami a couple of weeks later in the final, and again 6-3, 6-4 for Federer. So usually, if 2 players of this quality face off 2 times in such close succession, the player that came out on the losing end the time before is coming out for vengeance. They've got a fresh idea in their mind of what to do. But the dominance of Federer in 2017 was such that actually Nadal couldn't get his foot in the door in that match. And then they played again in Shanghai end of the year, and Federer again 6-4, 6-3, not dropping more than 4 games in any of those sets, which is seriously impressive. Now we look at today, and I don't think that Federer is quite replicating his 2017 form. I don't think he's quite as solid off the backhand side. I do think that he is in brilliant form. I think he's had 1 loss this season, which was that Australian Open loss to Stefanos Tsitsipas, 4 very close sets, and he just wasn't there for the biggest moments in that match. But apart from that, hasn't lost a match, hasn't faced the highest caliber of opponent, no, but he's handled what he needs to handle. Nadal, on the other hand, incredibly convincing at the Australian Open, to the point where, even though I was predicting Djokovic to win, I did think that Nadal had more of a chance with each match that passed, because he was playing so well, because he was problem solving so well, because he was striking the forehand so well, getting the depth, playing brilliantly from all areas of the court, quite frankly. And I'm seeing more of that in Indian Wells. I think he's been playing incredibly well, and I think that when his opponent's level is raised, he's raised his own level as well. He's changed at what needs changing in order to compete, and that has been very impressive. So, I've probably watched more of Nadal this tournament than Federer, to be fair, but probably I'm more convinced by Nadal's form and what he's played so far heading into this match. But I don't brush across the Stan Wawrinka win as much as other people do. A lot of people were saying, oh, well, that's a given, because in their rivalry, Wawrinka's beaten Federer 3 times, Federer had beaten him 21 times or something, and they were saying that that victory was a given. But a lot of those victories for Federer actually came before Wawrinka was a more constant. He's never truly consistent, Wawrinka, that's just the player he is, but before he was a Grand Slam champion, before he was more consistent, and Wawrinka has had some significant wins over Federer. And I just didn't brush across that one so lightly, because even though Wawrinka's on his way back, even though he doesn't sit well in the head-to-head, he's a quality player. He's beaten Novak Djokovic in the French Open final when everyone else was getting ready to hand Djokovic the trophy. He's risen up. He won that first Australian Open title, defying the odds, beat Djokovic and Nadal in succession. So he's a quality player. He could get inside Federer's head a bit, and yet Federer handled him and backed it up with that win over Edmund. So I found that quite convincing from Federer. With this match against Nadal, I think that previous history, and Federer said it himself, he says that he doesn't think his previous dominance, more recent dominance over Nadal is going to have much bearing on this match, which Federer would say because he knows how to play it. He wouldn't say if he thought he was the favourite going into this. But I think it's true when you've got a rivalry with so many levels as this, with such history behind it, with so many wins for each player. At the end of the day, sometimes form leading up to it doesn't matter. Sometimes the previous head-to-head doesn't matter. When these two players, who are two of the greatest beyond a doubt, come onto court, they're just going to raise their level for each other. Fitness for Nadal might have a say in it. But I think that the mental side of this is going to be easier for Federer to bear than, say, a Grand Slam final against Novak Djokovic. He is going to view this as a 50-50 thing, I think, between him and Nadal, and that's going to help him. And honestly, as he himself said, you can go either way with this and have perfectly legitimate reasons for picking your winner. So I'm not going to kick myself over this and go back and forth and back and forth. I think that this is Nadal's best opportunity to break this losing streak against Federer away from clay. I don't think Federer is just going to keep beating him until they retire. And yeah, I would say that this is Nadal's best opportunity to break the streak away from the clay courts. However, I also think that Federer has been playing a high standard of tennis this season. I think that he will raise his level against Nadal, and obviously he did clean up when he played him on hard courts in 2017, and Nadal had been in great form himself that year. So I am going to go with Roger Federer in this match, which I may live to regret. I am not as confident as I would have been 2 years ago picking him to come through, so I am going to say Roger Federer to win in 3 sets, and we can only hope that Nadal is fit and ready for this match. So that's my prediction there. 2 predictions done, wrapped up. Leave a comment when this stream is done. Let me know if you agree with my predictions and which match you're looking forward to watching and what you think of the Federer rivalry as a whole. Now, I said that I would do a bit of explaining about where I've been, so I've done it again. I don't think I uploaded the whole of February last year either, but I had quite a bit going on. I was away, I was commentating in February, I was working at a tournament in February. These things, they just fly by, and before you know it, you've moved on. I did film a video in February because, if some of you may have seen, I put out a question asking people what they might like me to talk about and stuff, and it was quite obvious what you did want me to talk about, so I did film that video, but then I was away commentating and I didn't have time to do anything except plan, commentate, sleep, and the footage is still there unedited. So because I did say that I would make that video, I'm going to take parts of it and hopefully upload it still anyway, but I'm going to stop saying that I'm going to do stuff because it makes me feel bad when I don't get around to doing it. So please, if you haven't, subscribe, hit the notifications button, because that is how you're going to find out when I'm uploading. Also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, that kind of thing, because this is where I update you on what I'm doing and when I'm actually going to get a video up. And yeah, I had the sore throat thing this week, so that stopped me from doing any previous Indian Wells content. I didn't want to keep doing live streams. I don't want this channel to just become a bunch of live streams, even though that's easier for me. But I thought at the end of the day, better a live stream than nothing. So, which is why I've done a live stream for this particular video. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Thank you for all the comments that I get that are really encouraging. Even when someone just puts great video, it makes me happy. It encourages me to keep going. So thank you. And yeah, enjoy the semi-finals. I'm gonna hit stop on this video and get to recording the women's preview and prediction. Hopefully I'll have that up in decent time. And yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully these predictions don't utterly fail, and I will see you soon.